Welcome to Monday Meals. People are so excited to hear more, but tell us who you are and tell us a little bit about Restore Oakland.
Thank you, Pecolia, first of all, for this invitation to speak to the Oakland Rising community, but also really to sit down and have this conversation at this time. My name is Joy. My pronouns are she, her. I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. That's such a strong part of my personality, but I'm called home, and have been with Restore Oakland Inc. for the past year and a half. And my work really is in this realm of politicized healing, organizing, facilitation, and really cracking into what is it? How are our elected officials responsible for making sure that we are well, that we are resourced, and that we have what we need to thrive. And so a lot of that work is being channeled through the Care First Community Coalition that Restore Oakland is a member of, which is a 13 to 16 member body that works on behavioral health organizing in the county. And we also run the healing, organizing, political, and education circle out of Restore Oakland, which is really mobilizing care workers to understand behavioral health needs and, doing mutual aid projects, et cetera. So that's right now.
That's what's up. And for those who don't know, why is that work important from your perspective?
It's important because, listen, y'all, we live under capitalism. We live under racism. We live under all of these systems that are designed to break our bodies down, are designed to prioritize our labor, but they're not really designed well to keep our communities healthy. They're not really designed well, especially to allow us to take care of ourselves. And I am someone that lives with anxiety. I'm someone that lives with, has experienced mental health issues, and so many other people in my community have done the same. And mental health issues are kind of range on a spectrum to being mild to being really severe. And it's because of the rise in very serious mental health issues that we be really focused on, like behavioral health access. It's because of the rise in houselessness that we need to be focused on behavioral health access. Because if we're not focused on these things, what our elected officials are really focused on is funding the jails, is funding things that do not keep us healthy, that do not keep us safe. And so we'll continue to see a rise in these things if we're not actually putting our investment into what's keeping us well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think sometimes we talk about what keeps us well from the sense of oh, well, if you just go to the doctor, you're good. But I think what you're also trying to bring into this conversation within the community is that there's multiple ways to do care, right? And that our government at the local level has some responsibility to have infrastructure for our care, but also that as a community, there's a whole level of infrastructure that is within the local government's control to support, and then also exists outside of this realm of capitalism that really feeds toward that longer vision of what it looks like for us to reclaim some of our indigenous practices, for us to reclaim some of our ways of being in community and caring for each other in community. And so I know I've been able to witness some of the circles and participate in some of the circles, and fundamentally, believes that there are some really important components of our prior traditions that we've lost through the onslaught of capitalism and its impact on our communities that are coming back into our day-to-day living. And circles, to me, feel like a really important component that brings us back into community with each other, but also brings us back into community in a way that where we share responsibility for this idea of health, right? And I think that's a hard one right now for Oakland, because there is a lot of wanting to blame people for what's happening, right? Wanting to blame someone because there's an expectation under capitalism that, it's not, someone's in charge of our health versus we are in charge of our health. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Care First Coalition. We are now a member of the Care First Coalition. So excited to be a part of it. And if you could speak to the Care First jail/slash policy that the coalition has been so instrumental in bringing about and pushing forward at the Alameda County level.
Mhm. I just want to like touch a little bit about what you were saying before, Pecolia, and it really brings to mind this quote from Audre Lorde where she says, um, caring for myself is not just an act of preservation, it's an act of political warfare, right? And so it is our right to be well.
Mhm.
Healing justice as a framework prioritizes the somatic, physical, spiritual well-being of Black and Brown folks, particularly, but of all people who are organizing, because we need to be able to continue to carry forward this work. Like, we're not going to stop organizing for the things that we need, but we also need to be well, right? And so, you know, bringing it back to the Care First Community Coalition, like we are now 16 organizations that really span the gamut of people who care about behavioral health issues, from faith leaders to organizers to family members of folks that have serious mental illness to advocates for folks that um, are differently abled. And we all kind of coming together under this banner to do two things. The first is the recognition that this county has a crisis of many different sorts, from a housing crisis to a behavioral health crisis, um, that all kind of land people in Santa Rita Jail. And Santa Rita Jail is a space that like has numerous lawsuits. It's recognized that this is not a place where people can get the care that they need, but it also exacerbates mental health conditions. But if that's the case, why do 40% of the people who are incarcerated in this jail have a mental health condition? Why is it that we are constantly resourcing this jail and resourcing the sheriff's office when it is half empty, nearly half empty? These are the things that we are placing our investments into, but meanwhile, the crises that are kind of unfolding in our county continue to worsen because there is not comparable infrastructure. There aren't treatment beds. There aren't, you know, housing options that include permanent supportive housing or residential boarding care. And so the Care First Community Coalition decided to come together really to advocate for these things, provide budget solutions. So we have a $171 million budget platform that kind of outlines what would actually bring our system into full resourceness. But also, we really want to decarcerate Santa Rita Jail. That's the other thing that's really important. Once we win and divest from the things that are not allowing us to be well, we need to reinvest in the community, and we also need to get folks out of the jail because we know that that's not the place for them. And so all of this is coming under the Care First Jails Last policy that was passed in 2021. Some of our organizers, Tash Wynn of Restore Oakland and John Lindsay Poland of American Friends Service Committee, kind of really bottom lined the creation of this policy. But it was also adopted by all five board of supervisors at that time unanimously,
Mhm.
because the recognition that actually we are relying too heavily on the jail,
Yeah.
ending up there because we do not have community-based infrastructure.
Hmm.
If a family member and my family member is having a crisis, if I call 911, the police will show up. These are things that like we recognize in Oakland, which is why APTP has their crisis, you know, mobile crisis response team and things like that. Like, we recognize that these things are a need, and until we create kind of a vision for how to divest from the jail, we're going to continue to have people in there. And so for the last 2 years, there's been a task force, the Care First Jails Last Task Force, creating recommendations for how actually we do this. How do we increase community-based resources and decarcerate the jail? And so 2 weeks ago, we saw those recommendations being finalized, which is such an exciting thing. So be at the end of the process. And I won't say the end. The work is now just beginning, but we're.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, congratulations to Care First Community Coalition. I think that it's always a beautiful moment when, sometimes people think the sexiest part of organizing is winning the policy being passed, but really the hardest part, the part that I think is where we kind of lose, to be honest, the community, is in making the policy become real, making it something that's tangible. And I think that for those in the community that are watching this, to be able to say we want to de-incarcerate our system here in Alameda County is a very big goal, right? It is something that we are all used to. If you do something, you go to jail, right? And there's got to be a conversation to what I said earlier around the we all keep ourselves safe. We all are part of the process of keeping our community healthy. We have to start imagining a way in which that statement can be true. And yes, it's good to have restorative justice circles. It's good to have healing. And I'm so excited to see those things being held and moved forward by Restore Oakland and the Care First Community Coalition. We also have to hold local government accountable to making systems change. And that it means that we have to evaluate when something is not giving us the output that we want. As you said, we are sending people into these jails, and they are not having the best outcomes that they can have, right? They're not achieving the rehabilitation that we claim these incarceration systems are supposed to be manifesting, right? And so it requires us to evaluate, right? Like, wait a minute, why are we spending so much money on a process that's just not working for our community, and ultimately is creating worse outcomes for our community? And I think that is just good policy. That's good government to say, is the thing that we're putting money into actually getting us the outcome that we want, right? And sometimes people try to get caught up in this, conservative versus progressive versus moderate. Anybody with that much money, and we're talking about the super majority of our county budget, is going into the concept of incarcerating individuals under the guise of rehabilitation. And that we are saying, as community members who go in and out of Santa Rita, go in and out of supporting our folks in the community, to get access to the services that really do keep people safe, that really do make sure that they have what they need, that actually is not what's happening in our system. That is not what's happening in our Santa Rita jail. People are going in, people are dying, people are not receiving the care that they need. People are needing health care, not incarceration. And I think that you can call it whatever, mental health, behavioral health, it doesn't really matter. What we're arguing is that investments in health are right now more important than ever than just investing in incarcerating and locking people up. And that locking people up is actually creating this really negative system that just actually isn't benefiting our community. And I think we hear that a lot from those of us who've been formerly incarcerated. That there's a different way possible to really create positive impact. So I really appreciate you breaking down the policy, giving us a little bit of the history. Shout out to Tash for bringing all of us into awareness even last year about, hey, there's a county budget and we need to pay attention, because we tend to go to the city budget and try to advocate for things that actually we should be advocating at with the county budget. So give us a sense. So these recommendations have been moving forward. These recommendations are now coming out of the task force. What does that mean for the community? What should people be paying attention to now?
Well, part of the work of organizing, and I think you said it really well, which is not just winning the policy and making it a reality, but like, how are we allowing these recommendations to shape our imagination for what is possible, right? How do we cut through the noise that our elected officials will give us when they say they can't do something, but actually, not only do these recommendations realistically prove that you can, they are a roadmap to making, to moving. We talk about just transition, to moving from a system that we don't want to one that we do. And so there are 58 recommendations from Care First, Jails Last. And they kind of outline from a number of different perspectives: housing, treatment, the budget transparency and transparency of policies, as well as kind of community care and community-based investments. So they kind of give us a wide arc of how do we, of investing in upstream solutions to making sure that actually like our behavioral health system is working the way that it should. Because I, as a resident, as a private resident, make a lot of assumptions that our county is operating at full capacity and operating like, communicating with each other. Things should be smooth, but in fact, it is not. And one of those things I think about or come to mind is behavioral health court, which is kind of touted as this resource for getting folks who have serious mental illness out of the jail and diverted into treatment. But behavioral health court, right, has limitations, capacity limitations. It's not as simple as like, well, you have a mental health condition, and so you can get seen by this court. There's limitations in terms of the types of crimes that they'll allow into the court. And it's also a lot of politics. And so it's like what we're seeing is that these recommendations not only provide the board of supervisors with an opportunity to really make good on their promise. Like if this is a policy that they say that they believed in, how you now need to invest in it, you now need to adopt it, and you now need to allocate the budget to make sure that these things are possible. But also provides a roadmap for the county agencies that are also implicated in the changes that this policy requires. And so some of those county agencies are the district attorney's office, is the probation office, housing, social services. Like this is, I can't even underscore to you like the amount of work that it took really to understand that this is an opportunity to really overhaul all of Alameda County's systems, because they all work together, right? As in a way to like create this net where people are being held, but also if one, it's really this emblematic of like we all need each other. If we all need each other to get to where we're going to, and so we're also asking community members not just to like hold their supervisors accountable, but really call upon their DA, really call upon their call upon the agency heads to participate fully and in good faith so that we can actually get this done.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'll just highlight from what you said that for me is a learning process, right, is really understanding what the county is responsible for, right? And you name these departments, which I'm really grateful for, because I think that, as someone who used to be on CalWorks, as someone who used to be poor, I understand that system, right? I understand the challenges I experienced, that other moms like me experience with trying to get access to the supports to get the workforce development we need and get the housing we need and the childcare that we need to be able to not, be so poor, right? And notice I said to not be so poor, because baby, it's a journey to come from the bottom all the way up. And I think there's a perception in society that poverty is like a goal versus an actual effect of capitalism, an effect of not being provided skills and resources to be able to have a living wage job and to be able to have the skills to earn a living wage, right? So I understand that system, right? But I never would have thought or made the connection before recently of, oh, that system is managed by the board of supervisors, right? And I find in our conversations on the doors and out in the communities that many individuals don't really understand what are the things that our county is in charge of, our board of supervisors, our elected officials. However, we don't always know what they're supposed to be ensuring that is resourced in our community. So like when we say housing, most people don't really know that was that me? Oh, most people don't know that the county has a responsibility to help bring about affordable housing development, right? And so we usually only see the wait list is open or we see the developments being built, but we don't really see that the Board of Supervisors have a role in figuring out how to apply for state and federal grants that allow developers, namely nonprofit developers, to buy a site and build affordable housing, right? So I think that was like eye opening for me of like, oh, that's what the board is supposed to be doing, right? And in another example that you lifted up, let's talk about our healthcare system. When you're on Medi-Cal or Medicaid, you normally think about it being a federal investment, but it's really actually comes to us through the county. You go to a county office, you apply for Medi-Cal, you apply for Medicaid, and it is the responsibility of the county to ensure that the health systems are there. Your hospitals, your community clinics, so on and so forth, are there for you as residents to be able to access. So I just lift those up because I think what you're helping community to try to understand is that actually the things that really take care of us and our basic needs, our human basic needs, right? Because we're not even talking about going above basic needs. Housing,
Mm-hmm.
shelter is, those are things that we all talk about as human rights, right? We talk about access to water, clean water, access to education, right? Access to the ability to earn wages in healthcare. I can go on and on and on. We're not talking about extravagant investments in, steaks and shrimp dinners every night. We're talking about, can I shelter myself, right? Can I really be okay with the foundational components that every human should have access to, and the role that our county really plays in ensuring that? So that's just the first layer of what you just brought to us. And then the second layer is, are the investments actually happening?
Mm-hmm.
Are the investments in the things that we know for the size of our county, for the economic reality of our county, are they happening? And what I'm hearing you telling us is that not only are they not necessarily happening, but if they are, they're not necessarily being driven by the vision from community. And that vision from community to have affordable housing for folks who may be on like a SSI, supplemental income, because they're disabled, for folks who may be veterans, for folks who may be immigrants who just recently migrated here, for a number of different reasons, right? That the way in which we think about what people have a right to is really not getting through to the board and is not resulting in the policies or the services that we need from the county. And that's really just amazing to me, given that so much when we see these elected officials in the community, they proclaim to be doing the best for us, right? And so can you speak a little bit of like the experience it's been like to really try to close that gap, right? The gap between the vision of what we believe everyone has a right to versus what actually is our board doing, and how is the coalition, how is Restore Oakland trying to help us close that gap?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Um, when the county is responsible for so much, but they advocate their responsibility,
Mm,
makes accountability really murky,
mm,
right? And what I mean by that is the county, 80% of behavioral health services are paid or are provided by community-based organizations.
okay.
Uh, these are the things that the county has to include in their budget to do. But you can't pass off accountability to the CBOs. Like, it goes back to who's funding these services and making sure that there's actually enough money to hire the staff to care for our people, right? Um, and so a lot of what we needed to do is track back who's responsible.
Mm,
We had to compare in comparison to the CBOs, for example. who what their salary is, what are the salaries, what are the salaries, or what's the money actually going to.
Right.
Um, when we see, sheriff vacancies being funded at this rate, you could get a sheriff deputy being hired for $200,000. In comparison to, non-competitive salary rates, right? Like, we need to really draw connections between those things and call them out. But we also really need to listen to family members who, of course, have the lived experience of navigating the system, and formerly incarcerated folks who have the lived experiences of navigating these systems and being like, listen, like, y'all can create something that looks good on paper, but down to it, how is this actually going to land on me? Is this actually going to meet the need that we have now? Is it going to get people out of the jail now? Is it going to make sure that people are not going into the jail? So, like, these are the things that really the recommendations are trying to answer, and provide a roadmap for, and accountability, because the board of supervisors are elected, right? The head of Alameda County Behavioral Health, Karen Tribble, are not. And so she takes directives from them, right? Like, the people that we ultimately are in the ability to, like, bolster the system are ultimately needing to get the money from the board of supervisors. And, that's also true for the district attorney. That's also true for the sheriff. So I think what I'm trying to really lift up is, the work of the coalition was to kind of make their job a little bit easy so that they're not trying to do a guessing game of, like, what is it that we need to be investing in or prioritizing. Because ultimately, too, like, we saw this when we were fighting the jail expansion. There's a really lazy, analysis that comes when it comes to behavioral health care, and that, well, if we don't have behavioral health care and people are in the jail, then we need to just invest in the jail and make sure that the services are there.
Right.
We need to make sure that we're educating our supervisors on the realities of, like, actually, folks are going to depreciate there. Actually, it's cheaper for you to invest in community-based services, and more cost effective. It's saving you money, right? Like, it's a give and take. It's a negotiation. But I think it's this, in the education, we're also reminding them of the vision that we have for our communities, and reaffirming the need for care first, jails last. Like, this is not something that's aspirational. This is real.
Right.
Um, so, yeah, I think in both bringing the supervisors along, bringing task force members along, there's also bringing the community along. Like, your voices, your participation in both the budget processes, in these hearings around Care First, Jails Last. It really puts, a spotlight on the board of supervisors at the county level, because they're so used to being ignored. They're so used to operating under the shroud of secrecy because they're not being covered as heavily as maybe the city of Oakland City Council is. And that's historically been true, and we're trying to really change that dynamic so that they understand, oh, people are watching me. They're watching what we do.
Mm-hmm.
They're not aligned with what the community wants. There's also consequences for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Flexing people power is so critical. It's such an important part of how we combat against a conservative agenda. These will never spend as much money as they do. Like, let's just keep it real. We don't have tech pockets behind us. We do not have, real estate corporations behind us. They're the folks who are pushing this agenda to really, not invest in the things that keep people safe, and to really just lock up people, as many people as possible, and throw away the key, right? And they have an interest in that agenda, right? It results in them getting more contracts. It results in them getting access to cheaper land. It results in a lot of dynamics, right? And, to this election component that you brought up, it's also how they are able to spend their resources to decide who gets to represent us and who doesn't, because we have not all been participating in the election. And that's why Oakland Rising exists. We exist to basically encourage our people, our communities, to say we do have a stake in this. We actually can make decisions around which policies and which, laws are moving forward in our interest by participating in the election process and ensuring our voices in that space, not just in the living rooms complaining about what services are and aren't in our communities, right? And and how to be able to do that, right? Because most of us have never been to a board meeting. Most of us have never been to a city budget meeting, right? Or a city council meeting. Most of us just look at the news, and we have to be conscientious that our news is also corporate, right? It is a for-profit system, overwhelmingly, and they are really ensuring that the dynamic of, a certain narrative is moving forward, right? So that you don't know about the Board of Supervisors unless they want you to know about it, right? Or you don't know about the investments until they want you to know about it. So I really appreciate you breaking down for us, you know, hey, we have a stake in this. These are people working, quote unquote, on our behalf, and flagging that might not be the case all the way, but that this policy is a vehicle for us to all start paying attention to what is really in our interests, and how are we getting closer with every step, with every policy, with every law, to the system that really does represent the people and has the services the people need, right? So always going to keep saying thank you, thank you, thank you, because I know that it's not a heavy lift to put forth 50, I think you said 58 recommendations that span across everything from housing to tenants' rights to protections to healthcare to behavioral health to even just good budgeting practices. I think I saw in there as well. So tell people, how can they find out more information? Where should folks be paying attention over these coming weeks? We know there's so much going on in the budget process.
So there's a couple things happening, right? There is the need to formally adopt the
Mm-hmm.
recommendations. Recommendations will be presented to the Board of Supervisors on June 24th. But also, these recommendations are being presented at a time where the county budget has already been deliberated on, will be soon adopted in its own right. And so an adoption now does not mean that there's budget allocation. We need to make sure that the fight continues into the next year such that the Board of Supervisors is accountable to allocating and prioritizing Care First Jails Last in their budget, and making sure that agency heads are participating to make these recommendations a reality. So most immediately, we're wanting people to plug in on June 24th and roll out with us to the supervisors meeting, really to make your voice heard in support of the adoption of these recommendations. To make it easy, these recommendations are available to view on the County Task Force website, Care First Jails Last Task Force website, but also the Care First Community Coalition came up with a smaller set of recommendations of about 25. Um, and these are, we're calling the People's Plan for Safety and Healing in Alameda County, so that people understand, like, what are the recommendations that are at risk of being swept under the rug. Because when you provide the supervisors with recommendations, they'll ask you, okay, cool, what are your top 3? What are your top 5 that we can implement that are like low-hanging fruit? Low-hanging fruit is not going to get us free. Low-hanging fruit is not going to get us the sweeping holistic change that we need. And so the People's Recs for Safety and Healing in Alameda County really outline some of these critical foundational things that need to be happening, which includes the securing of permanent supportive housing, making sure that housing is deeply affordable and permanent through land trust. We're really advocating for and pushing for diversion, making it possible at the earliest opportunities. Making sure that treatment beds are purchased, and so that people can access them at all levels of need. And that the $26 million that we save from the jail expansion is reinvested into getting community-based infrastructure. So we're asking people to learn about the People's Recs. We're asking people to roll out with us on June 24th, and you can sign up through Restore Oakland Inc. And if you're wanting to be part of the conversation, the Care First Community Coalition meets every other Thursday. And you're welcome to come to our general meetings then as well.
Yes. So for those that didn't catch it, you can go to Restore Oakland Inc. to find out more information. I highly encourage folks to pay attention. Oakland Rising is also part of the Care First Community Coalition, and we'll be reposting information on our social media channels as well as on our website. There's a lot coming down the pipeline that we think is going to be really harmful for our community if we don't flex people power, right? In the last round of budget advocacy to ensure that there wasn't a special stand-aside election this summer, we heard the county administrator say that there's a $68 million deficit. And for those that don't know what a deficit is, that means that our county budget has more expenses than revenue projected to come in. And so there's a requirement in the state of California that the county balances its budget by June 30th. In some way, somehow they have to figure out how to ensure that that $68 million deficit does not appear on the books as of June 30, which means either cutting certain things back. And I think that the organizers here in this conversation, as well as in the community coalition that we are part of, really want the county, want the Board of Supervisors to be really diligent in looking at these recommendations and making sure that they're not cutting essential components of this system that would support us to be healthy in Alameda County, support us to really ensure that we are moving forward a process that's not exacerbating mass incarceration, because that's not what we're down for. But I do think that it requires us being really clear that community voice is necessary to get there, right? That it's not going to just be about our coalition showing up and saying that we believe in these recommendations, we believe in our funding being invested in these recommendations, but also that we believe that in order to move these recommendations, that we have to look at the amount of resources this county is spending to incarcerate our folks, instead of preventing violence, preventing the idea of community creating harm for itself by making sure people have what they need for their basic necessities, their basic abilities to survive. So yes, June 24th, please come out. Look forward to seeing you. In the meantime, continue to check in on Restore Oakland Inc. and Oakland Rising to find out more information and updates. We do know that our state budget and our county budget are highly linked. And so as you hear the state talking about these billions of dollars in cuts, know that those cuts come down here into the county budget. And I know I've already heard so much concern about cuts to some of our core community programs that support our formerly incarcerated to rehabilitate. I've heard about cuts to CalWorks program that supports our parents and our children to be able to have some basic income while they're rebuilding their skills and rejoining our workforce. So just those two alone make me like really nervous about what our elected officials are really doing to advance care for our community before they advance the incarceration of our community, right? And so, really, really appreciate you, Joyce, so much. Appreciate Restore Oakland, appreciate Care First Community Coalition, and know this, the fight will continue, and we're in a battle that will be won by who is able to flex the most people power.
Ashe.
Let's get it. So June 24th, come to the Board of Supervisors meeting. Definitely leave us a comment in the chat here and let us know what you all think. Other than that, next Monday meals will be coming from the county budget to going into the city budget and really looking at what's going on here in the city of Oakland and how this state budget, county budget is also impacting our city budget, as well as what's just happening in the city of Oakland. There's so much going on. So So,
for grounding us in this moment, but also, yeah, for continuing to make these conversations accessible to community.
yes. And if you have, I'm sure we'll have you come back on later on in this year as we kind of really kick off the election cycle. There's probably some ballot initiatives that we all want to make sure people are concerned about, but also the work continues. And after this budget is passed, I'm sure there'll be some updates that you will want to give folks on the amazing community healing work. We're going to need to make it through 2024. So check y'all out. Thank you so much for coming.
Mhm. Take care, y'all. Thank you all.
Everyone, bye.
Bye.